Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Real Freedom Podcast. And I'm so excited to have Bill Gross here today. So Bill is the LA probate expert because he has the LAprobateexpert.com URL. So by nature, you are the expert at probate in the Los Angeles area. Hosts weekly call to discuss how to get sales in probate, how to engage with probate attorneys, and more probate-related topics. Obviously, that's really important here for us in real estate. Born in Santa Monica, raised in Orange County, live in the Inland Empire, have been in real estate for over 30 years and closed thousands of transactions. So obviously a lot of wealth here, specifically in the area of probate, which we're going to cover here in this episode. So welcome, Bill. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So why don't you just go ahead and share a little bit more about your background and your story here, how you kind of got to where you're at today, and then we can dig in and focus more on probate after that.
Well, I mean, my initial career was, somewhat nondescript. I had out of college been in aerospace, electronics, and my brother was in real estate, so I kind of checked into it and built a career and had done really well, and then ended up getting into management and recruiting for a company, and did real well with that until the company stopped growing. And the problem in management is that the company is not doing well, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. And so I realized at the age of 60. After having a really nice career, I was making really good money, that I hadn't really built the wealth I needed to. I had some setbacks along the way, and I don't want to bore anybody with those stories, but things happen, and I raised a family and did real well, but I needed some wealth for the rest of my life. And so I actually met with a man who had coached me years ago, Don Hobbs, who now is actually the president of Success Magazine. I had the privilege to sit with him one-on-one after seeing his talk on the importance of branding and focusing on one niche. And so 2.5 years ago, I started full-time lead generating in the area of probate in Los Angeles County. And from there, I built a tremendous business to where I sold more houses last year than I ever had as an agent. Mm-hmm. And this year, already sold more this year through August than I had all of last year. So it's been really about focusing on something and creating expertise that gives me the chance to work with people who value my service. And those who don't, that's okay. There's enough people that seem to. And I really believe in this. This is the opportunity of a lifetime for me and anybody on this call. I've got a lifetime to build a business, because these tools we have are so powerful to distribute if you have real value to create and real value to share. And so I try to encourage everybody to find an area that you're an expert in or you have value in, and then serve that to as many people as you possibly can.
Yeah. And I think that's the cool thing about, in real estate is there's so many different areas of lead generation, areas of focus. And, what we often would tell people when I'd have agents on our teams that would come to me with this new idea of, hey, we should try this, we should try this, we should try this. Well, the answer is probably all lead generation works in some way, shape, or form. It's just what's the most effective form and what's going to be the best fit for you and your knowledge and expertise. And for you, obviously, you've carved out quite a niche in probate. That doesn't mean you couldn't send postcards and, farm a neighborhood and be successful, but it's really finding that mix of what works well with what is something that you're excited to do day in and day out, and it's going to help your business grow.
And good at. I think you'd have, so I did do an assessment of my assets, and I am older, so I have to work that to my advantage. I can't compete with younger guys door knocking. They're going to hit more doors than I'm going to be able to per hour, for example. But I could, being older, I have a little more maturity, a little more credibility at first glance. I like wearing suits and ties. So I was going to court every day, dressed like an attorney, wearing Brooks Brothers suits and ties and a briefcase, and really farming the court was really my lead generation when I started. And I'm able to talk to attorneys because my father was an attorney. I interned for attorneys. I know the business. So I think you have to do probate's a huge market too, like all of real estate. But you have to do an assessment of what your strengths are and what you want to do, and then make sure whatever your marketing is lines up there. And that way the lead conversion is more effective because you're good at that rather than just average, like it is for most people.
And I think for some people, the hard part of focusing in an area means that you're saying no to the other areas. And I think that's hard because you think, well, I could get business in this way, or I could get
Right.
business in that way. But
Right.
if you play it forward a couple of years and you see,
Right.
okay, I can actually grow more quickly if I
Right.
focus on this area. Yes, I'm giving up some business, but what I'm gaining is going to be more fruitful for me.
100%. The hardest thing in real estate, whether you're a real estate agent or investor, is to answer the question, what value do you create versus all the other realtors in the market? And if you're just like all the others, then you're going to get replaced by Zillow or Redfin. If you have unique value, then Zillow and Redfin are tools that are going to drive business for you or delegate tasks that you don't want to do. So you have to really think about what value you create versus other people and find that and work it. And I think the thing that shocked me, and Don was right from the beginning, he said that when you're perceived as an expert in something, people assume you know the basics. So if you think about it, let's say without getting political, should I take a COVID, vaccine or not, or whatever? Well, if your brother-in-law is a world-renowned brain surgeon, even though he doesn't have particular expertise in maybe immunology or viruses, he's an expert in medicine at such a level that you would value his opinion, if not accept his opinion as a medical expert. And the same is true with real estate, that because I'm a probate expert, I think homeowners properly assume I can list and sell a house. That's easy. I do a lot of them. I do 30 houses a year. That's a lot for most agents in my market. I do a lot of smaller houses. I do houses at lower price, lower quality, but I negotiate every one of them. I'm talking to agents and buyers. So the skill set's higher as an expert, but that allows me. And so I tell people, I mean, the truth is half my business is non-probate. All my lead generation is in the field of probate, but I get other business because of my expertise.
So let's just take a second then and kind of give, the nuts and bolts around probate for people that have been interested in that, that have been a real estate agent, or like, hey, I really maybe have an interest here and want to focus more. Just give us a little bit about, where should I focus my time? What should I do to learn? And kind of how have you taken that and leverage it to be a great tool in your toolkit?
Right. So the first thing I would say is it varies by state and it varies by county. So not knowing where your listeners are, I'm assuming most of them are not in LA County.
Right.
And of course, we're in a COVID time. So whatever I say that doesn't work because of COVID restrictions, just start that after that stops, whatever that is. But I would say the first thing I would recommend I say a great resource I used was alltheleads.com. Now they're a service that sells data, and they sell market material, they sell coaching, but they give away more training for free than anybody else sells. They have a free weekly role play call, they have a free monthly mastermind, they have a great website, you can search questions there. I would say check that out. The other thing I tell people is go to your local county courthouse where they do probate. You can go online usually and get a lot of information. And I would just say show up with the idea of researching, spend a day, find out. And generally it starts in the morning. So be there for the first call in the morning to see what does it look like. Is the judges there in person? Is it all in video? It all varies by county now. Watch the procedures. You should see attorneys there. You'll see investors there often. So I would definitely encourage people to learn some information about your particular area and how it's done versus others. And then you can get a strategy from there, because not all strategies work for everybody.
Right.
And I will add one more thing, that the companies that sell the data tend to sell one of two strategies: either mail or call petitioners, families that are inheriting property, or mail or call attorneys. Calling attorneys, very difficult. Mailing to either side in some markets is very competitive. Smaller markets, good idea. But I actually teach there's 11 ways you get business. Those are only two of them. And for an agent who has business, you could bolt on one of those other 11 ways to your current business that won't cost you much money, not a lot of rejection. You have to start at 3 hours a day calling everybody. And so I would say there's a lot of ways to get business. If you go there, sometimes though, you'll discover which way makes sense for you individually.
And which ways have been most successful for you?
Well, I've tried them all. And I would say I do a little bit of all of them. I look at it as, I was never in the military, but I imagine that when you have a bad guy, that you attack them from multiple angles, right? You try and circle them, you have helicopters, you have planes, you have missiles coming from Navy ships, right? The more ways you can attack an enemy and keep them off guard. So not to make my clients the enemy, but the more I can attack them. So if you think about it from a probate case, they're selling a house, the more ways I can approach that house, the better. So if I can contact the attorney and then I contact the petitioner, for example,
Hmm.
Well, when I talk to an attorney, I can say, well, I've been talking to Mr. Jones, which is true. If I talk to Mr. Jones, well, I know your attorney, Betty Jones. Well, that's also true. If I door knock the house, I never door knock, but I have team members who door knock the houses for me. So now they see the house and they know in there's a renter, there's a tenant, there's an heir or whatever. So now we have multiple angles of attack. And so I think that the more ways you can approach something, the better. So I try to tell people, if you're gonna make this your full-time niche, you really need to adopt probably 3 or 4 different lead generation strategies, and then constantly add a new one to get rid of one that's not working, but do it in combination.
And the reality of that is it's it's no different than more traditional real estate.
Correct.
You know, you're gonna maybe do a postcard if let's say you're farming a neighborhood. You're gonna do a postcard. You're gonna do a door knock.
Correct.
Probably some people in your neighborhood. You might have them on social media, so they're gonna see some of your stuff on social media.
Yes.
So it is that multi-tier angle that's
Yes.
gonna get them. It's not just I only mail or I only call, but they're gonna respond more fruitfully when you've got kind of multiple angles there.
100%. I think the term in marketing is called multi-channel. If you can address people in a multi-channel, so you're 100% right. When I have new agents who want to use another method, like farming is a perfect example. So you get a certain number of houses. You say, well, I'm going to door knock 100 a day, 20 work days a month, and every 90 days I'll go back to the beginning. Great. Now you have 6,000 houses identified. Don't postcard all of them. Just postcard everyone that you meet, for example. And then social media, add them all into your database for social media. And so I think that it's the same thing, that if you can attack people from 2 or 3 different angles, you just catch them at different times, different channels, different ways to evaluate it. You don't really know which one's going to work.
Now you had mentioned attorneys. So obviously so for those that don't focus on probate, you might think, well, I don't know any attorneys yet.
Right.
How do you go from I don't know any attorneys to now I've got quite a few attorneys that are great lead sources for me?
Great.
How
So
does
one of
that
my 11
relationship grow?
I think that's my favorite technique. My favorite technique for agents who are making a living. You're full-time, you're making money, you really need to make more, but at least you have a business that's going. Like you know how to sell houses. So this is my favorite technique for them, which is take your list of past clients and put them all into 1 of 3 categories, either your CRM or in a spreadsheet. There's 3 categories. Now you're in, again, what state are you in?
Minnesota.
Every state's a little different, but I believe universally there's a concept called a living trust. And living trusts are ways to avoid probate. Now in California, it's a big deal because our probate's expensive. In other states, it's not as big a deal, but it's still important. And living trusts also give non-real estate advantages. For example, God forbid you're incapacitated or die, how are your medical affairs managed? How do you maybe have kids? How do you give all your money to your kids who are underage? No, but you create you can establish all that. So I highly recommend everybody who has a house and or $150,000 or more to have a living trust. And so I think that if I was a realtor, I'd learn about that, learn about the particulars in your state. You go online to YouTube, you can look living trust in Minnesota or living trust in Alabama and get an attorney who will talk about the advantages, and they offer that service. And then categorize all your past clients as either they have one because when they took title in a trust, or you don't know, or they don't have one. And so I would call all those that I know have a living trust. The other thing you can do is you go online, at least in most states, and pull up public records and see how they took title. If they took title in a trust, they have one.
Right.
So I would call you up and say, hey, Mike, Bill Gross, I'm the realtor that sold your house. How are you doing? How are the kids? Blah, blah, blah. By the way, I noticed, you guys took title. You took title in a living trust. And I'm just curious how that's worked for you. People love talking about smart decisions. So going on. At some point, I'll say, well, I talk to people like you all the time, customers like you that need living trusts. I'm always looking for an attorney that can service them. Are you comfortable sharing who your attorney was and me referring the business? Now, they're either going to say, oh, yeah, our attorney was Betty Boop. She's the greatest. We love, love, love Betty Boop. Here's her number. Now you can call Betty Boop, not for referrals, but just to introduce yourself as a way to add your network. And so a couple of things you can do at that point is, number one, when you call Betty Boop, and this is a little trick I learned, you don't ask them, kind of refer you business, because nobody really does that. You ask them, are you still writing living trusts? That's a phrase that tells the attorney you know the business, because brand new attorneys will do living trusts. Experienced attorneys won't. They'll either hire a junior or delegate it out. It's kind of like first-time home buyers. Newer agents always work with them. Established agents find somebody else to delegate that work to. But in the long run, those first-time home buyers become listings, And to an attorney, those new living trusts become business in the long run, which is more profitable. So yes, and that key question, do you still write living trusts? And they do. Are you, would you be interested? Are you comfortable in me referring people to you? Like Mike Swenson, he was so happy with you. I'd meet other people. Would you be okay with me making an introduction? Oh yeah, of course. Most will say yes. I'd love just to meet with you, not to solicit you. I'm not here to pick you for business. Just that way, if I refer somebody, I feel comfortable I've met you. Can I meet you for lunch? Can I meet you for coffee? I find most attorneys, their nature is they'll go out to lunch with almost anybody. That's just kind of their, just kind of their business model.
Right.
And they think they're supposed to be network with people at lunch. And so I always would take them to a nice lunch place. Doesn't have to be expensive, but it should be business oriented type lunch place. And I just found that a very easy way to get inside them and not ask them for referrals. I would never ask them, but now they're in my COI database for the rest of my life. I have that attorney and the other one. So I would say most agents, if you've closed in your last career 100 deals, let's say over 10 years, you've got 3, 4, 5 attorneys in that database that you can pry out of your system and right away have a relationship with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then once you've built that relationship, you're checking in with them and then asking for referrals down the road, or you're just letting the relationship do the walking there?
So I let the relationship do the walking, because if I'm an expert in real estate, they need somebody occasionally to refer somebody to who's an expert in real estate. Now, again, this gets back to being an expert. If you're just a real estate hack, well, everybody knows 10 of those, right? Yeah. That's and they hate us. The average person hates realtors because the average realtor is so bad. And so I always tell people, isn't that great? Because I don't have to really compete. I just have to get ahead of that person, that average agent, to stand out as an expert. And so, I advise all the agents in my team, you need to send out something that's real estate related to everybody you've ever met every week. And so you establish yourself as an expert in the real estate market. Most agents can't do that. Most agents won't do that. And the stuff they'll send out will be pictures of their body or pictures of their food or pictures of family, which is nice. But I'm talking about the real estate industry. So that an attorney who has a case with $1 million estate feels comfortable referring me the $500,000 house, that kind of material about the real estate market. So that's, I just find if you do that and your social media is on that and you friend them in Facebook, most importantly, LinkedIn, eventually they see you as the expert.
Yeah, that's great. So, okay. So you've obviously grown your business here over the last couple of years. What other tips and advice do you have for people if probate is where they want to focus? What else should they be thinking about?
Well, I think whether it's probate or not, the number one mistake to avoid, or the number one thing to do when you build your business out, is understand that the long tail of marketing. The average, I can go into detail in it, but the short version is the average lead from the time they start looking online at Zillow or Redfin or a similar site to closing, the average is over 2 years. Now, that doesn't mean people don't buy a house within 30 days. I mean, we love getting those people or want to list in 30 days. But the reality is they're thinking about it, talking about it, researching on average 2 years. That means some are 4 and 5 years. And your marketing has to at least get to average. So you have to think about, what am I going to do with somebody so I am relevant to them 2.5 years from now? So when they do decide, at least the fat majority of buyers and sellers will at least still be in the game with me, right? You can't concede. Otherwise, you're just priming them for the next real estate agent or the next person. So whatever your system is, it has to include reaching that time. That's why I say do it every week. If you email something to everybody every week, forever in your career, you're going to stay in touch with them forever. And I literally have clients who come back to me 7-10 years later saying, I get your email every week. It's crazy to think about, but I email everybody I've ever met, every week. And I think that's the number one missed opportunity for most agents is there. Now, once you email, you can do a podcast, you can do a video, you can add that's the same thing in my mind, is the consistency of a messaging to your database, and you can upgrade it. But that's to me, the minimum that most agents aren't reaching.
So what type of stuff are you, you had mentioned, not what food you eat or, what you're doing, but something real estate related for those people that are maybe looking for ideas. What are some ideas of stuff that you've done that it's been successful?
So criteria I have is something that I find interesting. I'm just commenting on it. So I made a list of real estate industry resources. like California Association of Realtors has a nice little newsletter section with like 8 or 10 different articles, and different companies, Zillow has one, and other companies have other ones I found over time. Or I'll do a search in Google News under real estate and housing, and Twitter, real estate and housing, and nothing really magical, but I just read a bunch of, I literally my calendar every Sunday, block out 5 p.m. Now, sometimes I'll adjust it based on what I'm doing, but I block out time to spend about a half hour reading articles, finding one I like, and then I just summarize it in 3 or 4 sentences or 5 sentences, or some days I'm inspired to write a whole page. This one this week was on staging, so I wrote a long article on it, but most of my 3 or 4 lines summarizing an article, linking to that article, and then emailing out to the database. Now I also then now shoot a video and attach the video to that article as well. That's an upgrade. And I think that's becoming more almost required that we all participate with some video. But at a minimum, the email should go out and it should be on a topic that you find interesting, that you find relevant to the market from where you sit. I write what I like, and that way, and I would never send out a canned piece by a company, because the way to engage with people is in my language and with my point of view. People who like me, not everybody does, a lot don't. People who like me and know me like my voice, my voice in terms of what I see. And people like you like your voice. And so yours has to be distinctly different from where you sit. But so again, I would just say, just find something you like and then write an article about it. Just write 3 or 4 or 5 sentences and link to it. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah, and what I like what you're doing is you're showing, okay, here's my professional take on this piece of information, so they can read the article if they want, they can hear your synopsis if they want, they can do both, they can watch the video. But what you're doing is you're in their mind as, I know real estate, and it could be like, so your focus is on probate, but at the same time, it's an article about staging. So you're hitting them from different angles, different sides of real estate. So they're knowing, oh my goodness, if I've got a real estate question, Bill's my guy, because you're commenting on all sorts of things over the course of time. And so you're training them in a good way. Like, hey, I'm your guy for anything real estate related.
Right. And keep in mind on email that, 20% open my email, which means 80% don't, right? So of the 80%, a bunch go to spam, but I'm imagining 20, 30% see the headline, don't open it. Just that, Bill Gross, and then something about real estate. Like, that's valuable marketing information.
Right. Yeah. And even if I'm not interested, going back to that example of staging, I just bought a house 3 years ago. Staging's not my gig. I could care less, but I still see Bill Gross in my inbox, Bill Gross Real Estate every single week. They're going to choose to read what they want to read, but they're still at least seeing your name come across their inbox, which is key.
Yep. Or their friends saying, well, we're getting ready to stage our house because we're thinking of selling it. Boom, they're going to call me up and say, hey, by the way, my friend's getting ready to sell their house. So that's how it works.
Simple, not easy, right?
Correct.
It's easy to do that, but to take the time block to do it consistently. And what people want is they want somebody who's going to do that consistently. So, sometimes it's that mundane stuff that's the most important, because you're staying top of mind with people and you're doing it consistently, time on time over the course of years.
I think it is. I think that's really the key to it. It's the doing that work consistently is way more important. The big mistake we all make is we're all seduced by these big plans and these big ideas, and we all think it's going to transform our business. It's just not. It's the execution is a lot of little details, and you have to. Once you get your email, there's a lot of little details. How does it look? What kind of text? Do you put a picture in it or not? All those things over time, you're constantly trying to tweak it, make it better, look at your numbers, look at your open rate, your click-through rate, and over time get better at it. It's like anything else. And if you do, you'll get so good that other people can't compete with you. Now, in the minds of your tribe or your database, you're now the expert. And there's nobody, Zillow, Redfin, they can talk about whatever they want, but they're just not going to get in the minds of your clients because you now have control of it in a sense.
Right.
You've earned it.
Exactly. Great. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for coming on and for sharing your knowledge. For folks that want to learn more about you and more about what you're doing, how can they find you and get a hold of you?
Sure. So I host a weekly call on probate. If you're interested in that specifically, it's Thursdays, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, probateweekly.com. And if you can't make it, if you register, we'll send you out a link to the YouTube every week. So probateweekly.com. And then if you want to see me or contact me, my website is LAProbateExpert.com. That's THELA probate, PROBATE, expert, EXPERT.com. Has my phone number and other information how to reach me.
Awesome. And I know you've got a great YouTube channel as well.
Thanks.
Bill Gross with a lot of great videos too. So if
Thanks.
you haven't watched any, or if you're just jumping on board your videos and your information now, you can go back and see all the stuff that you've done in the past too. So
yeah, probateweeklyepisodes.com is the playlist of all the past episodes of Probate Weekly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for coming on. Appreciate your time and appreciate you sharing with our audience.
Mike, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.